So I'm going to start now. All right, everybody, welcome back to SaaS Talks from Lead to Close. As promised, we have our monthly special guest, Ryan Vaillancourt. I was going to say Vanilla-Court, but I made sure to practice that before. Ryan is the VP of Sales at Revenue.io. And today he's actually going to talk about a topic that I don't think is talked about enough. I don't think reps are doing this enough. And not enough reps are reviewing their, call it gameplay footage, their demo recordings. And they're either relying on their manager or they have some recordings, but they don't actually use it. So he's going to talk about how to use gameplay footage, in this case, your call recording, your demo recording, to self-coach so you don't have to rely on your manager. And if you are a manager, this will be helpful because now you'll know how to do it for your reps. So you can actually close more demos, you can improve your discovery. And even if you did screw up on a call, you can sort of climb back up and salvage the deal. So Ryan, you have the floor. I'm going to give you the mic. I'm going to stay true to this, 20 minutes or so on the clock. If I feel like I'm going to have questions, which I will. So you're on, you're up.
More. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Not enough reps are doing this. Not enough reps are using an incredibly valuable resource that pretty much all of us have at our fingertips, which is, you said gameplay footage, game tape, basically your meeting recordings, whether you're using Zoom or whatever video conferencing tool out there, you've got the recording, you've got a searchable transcript. A lot of you out there listening get to use a conversation intelligence tool, right? And so why aren't we using this resource to really investigate, reflect on, learn on, and to watch our performance? We put so much work and we place so much value in our execution in these discovery meetings and in these demos. And it's almost like, most reps are, they're relying on each live rep as the opportunity to practice and get better. But there's so much opportunity to get better just by reflecting on each one that we have. So by using the game tape, I basically have a number of little plays that reps can run for themselves to get better faster. And it's not only about improving for the next one, it's actually going to increase your ability to execute in the deal in question.
Sweet. And Simon, I'm just out of curiosity. This is sort of, I don't say it's on topic, but why do you think reps don't listen to their calls? You think I think it's laziness. What do you think?
Yeah, so laziness is a culprit sometimes. I think another way to digest it and understand it, having managed a lot of account executives, having been one, look, being an account executive is hard. Like our attention is pulled in a lot of different directions. Your average full cycle, B2B SaaS AE has some expectation of prospecting, of working, inbound opportunities sourced by marketing, by SDRs. A lot of those same AEs also have the opportunity to work upsell expansion within base accounts that they close. It's tough to figure out where to prioritize your time. Now, the best account executives are the best at prioritizing and staying really, really focused in the areas of their business that make the most sense. And the ones who struggle with that, they're spread really thin. And so I don't know, is it laziness? Maybe. I think it's more of a lack of focus and discipline around what's the best use of my time. And what often gets lost, and this is actually true of managers also, but what also gets lost by the rep is that focused time to sharpen their sword. Right.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Alrighty. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's all good. So let's talk about a couple of things that I know always worked for me. I coach my reps to do, coach customers at Revenue.io to look at is let's talk about discovery actually before we get into demos. If you are not leveraging your transcript and taking time to grab pieces of that discovery before you send that discovery recap, you're getting outsold by the reps who are doing that. When you communicate after discovery, sort of setting up the demo, here's what, can I swear on this?
Yeah.
Here's what shitty follow-up looks and sounds like. Hey, Mrs. Prospect, today we talked about how amazing my solution is, and you're really going to love how it's going to improve productivity. And here's a case study of how we helped a customer similar to you, right? Our demo is going to be next week, Tuesday. I can't wait to show it to you. That's shitty for a number of reasons. Namely, it's all about you. And it's easy to make it all about you because you know what your value prop is. You know what that case study is. You can churn those out. You can do it really, really, really fast. Guess what the customer cares about? Not you. What the customer cares about is them. And you're going to elevate yourself in the process as a better sales professional and somebody that they want to trust and spend time with and get value from working with if that written follow-up from the email does an excellent job at articulating what you as the sales rep heard in that meeting, right? And if you are not a robotic stenographer with a picture perfect memory, you're going to struggle to send a recap email that does a really good job summarizing and synthesizing what you heard, and then putting a little bit of analysis into that email in a way that is actually adding value. Even the best AEs, even the best discoverers, who when they come out of that have really strong intuition for, hey, here's what I heard, here's what's relevant, here's the things that I can do with that. Like, why would you not take 15 minutes to go back, go through a transcript, organize your thoughts, pull out the key moments so that you can put together incredible, recap and follow-up, which I would argue is where you set the foundation for your deal and build the blueprint for what your demo is going to be.
I already have follow-up questions to this. I'm going to ask it because we're on topic. The first question is, how long do you think a good recap email based on what you're saying, going back to the transcript, writing, and then sort of like filtering what you've read and then adding it, how long do you think a good recap email should take?
All right, it's a good question.
How many minutes?
Yeah, we could do, how long should it take you to compose it?
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Because what I thought you were asking is like, how long should it be on the page?
That too. So that's my other question then.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer it in reverse order because this is a little bit of a hot take, and some really smart people that I work with, or have worked with, or who are out there will disagree with me. And this is fine. I will fight this to the grave though. I'm totally okay with a recap email after discovery being what most people would consider to be extremely long. The reason for that is I actually don't care. The point isn't that you read it. And that's part of the hot take. Now, I actually believe that if you do your job and you send really good recap that's all about the customer, they will read it because it's a pattern interrupt. The customer isn't used to seeing like such thorough documentation of a conversation. But even if they don't, doesn't matter, because when you get to your demo, we're not getting into that demo, Mrs. Customer, until we quickly align around what we heard in the previous call. And maybe we do that slides. And in that instance, it should be shorter and concise. We want to get into the demo, but we're going to align around what it is that we heard, because that was the foundation for the email. So I'm okay with that email being really long if it's really good. And for it to be really good, you got to review the game tape generally. How long should it take? The simple answer to that is it should take as long as it takes you as the AE in your practice for it to be excellent, period, full stop. And some reps can do this in 10 minutes, and some reps may spend 45 minutes on that. And I'm completely okay with it. Because again, that exercise of writing down what you heard in discovery and organizing that in the way that's most helpful to the customer and setting up your demo, guess what? You also just wrote the content that's going to go into CRM, because your manager probably expects you to document the challenges and the things that you uncover. Like, this is disciplined work, like it shouldn't take 10 minutes. The rep who spends 5 minutes writing the recap is doing the shitty recap.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that. The way I heard also is writing out a very thoughtful post-call email with all the details from the disco, challenges, goals, whatever it is. It's advantageous, yes, to the prospect because they have the information from them, but it's extremely advantageous to the rep because it's a filtered, like when they have to do the demo or before the demo or even after the demo, part of moving the deal down the funnel is to constantly align it back to what was said in discovery. And if you have a really thought out email written out, that is sort of like your cheat sheet that you can always go back to whenever you need. That's interesting. What's your take of doing that recap email instead of a text version, but a video recap email?
Oh, I love that. That's cool. Like I definitely encourage for the reps out there, like, be creative. But if you're going to do a video recap, I would still encourage you to have a written component. Maybe it's in deck slides, which, by the way, if they see the little preview of that video, I think they're more likely to open it if they sort of see something there. And the reason I say that, again, use video as the medium to communicate what it is that you heard, but you can't skip the writing step. Writing, and this is, you'll get a little bit of my bias coming out. I was a newspaper reporter. I was a journalist before I stumbled my way into sales. But I believe my foundation in writing as actually a tool to understand, not to tell stories, but as a tool to understand, a tool for learning, really, really, really helped me in sales. It's the act of writing it down and synthesizing those thoughts that helps you learn it and get control of the concepts. If you want to deliver it via video because you're really good at that and it's in a deck, by all means, that's really, really powerful. But I would say not as a shortcut to skipping the writing step.
Love it. All right, cool. Those are my main questions. I'll save the last one for later because it's not as important. But yeah, you're back.
All right, cool. So let's move on. Let's talk about, okay, great. We get into the demo. So we do the demo. We put all of this thought into that. If we've done really, really good recap, like that recap was great preparation for the demo, by the way. That's why it's okay if it's 45 minutes to write that sucker. And we finish that demo and we get out of it and we think, all right, well, maybe we need to do another demo. We sort of aligned around next steps, and too many reps are just waiting for that next step to happen. One thing that I notice is even reps who get good at sending good initial meeting recap, they start to really suck at sending recap, like as you get further into the funnel, which actually makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
If you're doing your job in your demo, like, you discovered more things. So you're going to evolve what it is that you want to communicate back to the customer in terms of where we aligned around what the problem is and how we're solving these things. We're basically going to send that recap. So we got to do the same thing. We got to be thoughtful about, we got to digest what's the most important thing that we learned together. Me as the AE, you as the customer, right? Why would you not go back to your game tape again? Spend 15 minutes. The minutes you want to call out. And now I'm gonna share one of my favorite like small techniques that plays on some basic principles in human psychology, but also results in a demonstration to the customer that you really understand them and you're paying attention. One of the key values of going back into your game tape, searching that transcript, finding like the aha moments in the demo, in the recap, quote your customer. Don't and I mean literally in quotes. Again, there's that journalism background. But instead of, the customer says, oh, interesting, I hadn't thought about that. I think, we actually really struggle with X being something you didn't talk about in the initial discovery. Instead of in your recap or in your next conversations, saying, hey, remember we talked about, you decided, no, like literally write it out. But you don't have to write it out. It's in your transcript. Copy and paste it. Put that in a deck slide. Remind that person throughout the process. They're the ones who said it. Here are your words. Really powerful to see your own words in quotes in that recap and deck slides to be able to reference it. It's not you talking, it's the customer talking.
Would you, so like practically speaking, let's say you put it in an email, would you put it in quotes and then put like a like a dash and then like the customer name? Like how would you write it?
Literally like that. I would like literally like I put it in quotes and then dash customer name. I actually start a lot of what I used to do is I'd start my demos. I believe that the role of a deck in a demo is 90% just aligning around what we talked about in the previous call, and 10% is like, what's the critical thing I need to tell you about our business that's not otherwise going to come up in the demo, as long as that is actually valuable to you know. And so in articulating what we sort of heard before, you could write out the challenges that you heard about, and absolutely by all means do that, put on a slide. I love putting on a big deck slide. I could send you some examples if you want. Like just a bright color background and a big, powerful quote with that person's name on it. Just like, here's the thing that you said you're struggling. I'm not gonna
I'd love to see it, and I'd love to share it if you're okay with it. I have a private community, FTTC Inner Circle.
Yeah.
And I'd love to share it with them, but I'd be really interested in seeing that.
I'll anonymize some customer names and share it too.
Yeah, cool. All right. That's really interesting. I've never put in the customer quotes. What I have done is I've literally quoted the customer on a call. So I'll take something like, Ryan, I remember we spoke last week and you had said, and then I just say what you said in verbatim. I wouldn't say, and I quote, I would just say it, but interesting putting it, like documenting it on the email.
And more, that's super powerful too. But going back to the step that most AEs are missing, which is not going back to the game tape, how the hell are you supposed to articulate that verbatim if that's the way that you do
Right.
that? If you haven't taken that moment to actually go back and watch it and write it down, or just visually reference it somewhere in a transcript. Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. Okay. Can I move on to another
Yeah, you're
tip?
good. Yeah, you're
Okay,
good.
cool. So we're reviewing the demo, and we've talked about using the demo as a means to organize basically our follow-up. Something that you and I talked about in a previous conversation is, hey, like the best AEs are making some mistake in every demo. There's no perfect demo. There's a missed opportunity. And then there's the ones where, hey, man, maybe you really botched something. So I'll give you an example that actually it came up between our last conversations. I have a rep here at revenue.io who's really excellent at using game tape, at reviewing his own calls and his own demos. He's someone who kind of helped inspire this conversation, to be totally honest. And there is a demo technique that we teach here, and maybe you teach it too. We call it stacked questions. And basically the technique is this: you're in a demo, and prospect, asks a question mid demo. What we say is what you don't do is immediately answer that question, because what they're really getting at is usually 2 or 3 layers beneath what that question is, right? So they'll say, for example, hey, does the feature do X? And you could say yes or no. And even if the answer is yes, like what the stacked question would be like, hey, it sounds like that's important to you. Or like, hey, can you tell me more about why that matters? Or hey, sounds like you've seen this before. And invariably they will just like open up and tell you why it really, really matters. And then you're still going to answer the question honestly and with integrity, but now you have the context. So here's an example. A rep noticed that somebody had asked sort of a feature question, and they just said yes, and then talked for like 2 minutes, and realized that in reviewing the game tape. And in his follow-up, what he did, he said, hey, by the way, here are the things. And Mrs. Customer, you asked a question and I answered it, but I was reflecting on our conversation, and I realized I missed the opportunity to better understand like what you really care about there. So let's make a point to double click into that in our next conversation.
I love that.
Use the game tape to recognize the missed opportunities and call it out. Your customers are like, wow, that person's like really, human. It builds credibility. It builds trust.
There's a quote that I heard, and I love this quote. I had to pull it up because I didn't remember the verbatim, but JP Morgan said this quote. He goes, a man always has 2 reasons for doing anything: a good reason and the real reason. And I think it's really apropos to a demo where someone's like, oh, can I see this feature? The bad rep jumps in and says, yes, let me show it to you. The good rep says, hold on, what's the real reason they're asking for this? And they're following it up with a follow-up question.
Yep. Really, 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 really powerful. And by the way, managers, like, man, if you could do one thing consistently in using game tape to review and coach your reps, especially if you have a conversational intelligence tool, like you can visualize who's saying what, just like go to the point where customer speaks and then get the last 5 seconds of it, and then see how your rep responds. If they just kind of take the bait and move on and answer the question, stop there and coach them to get underneath what the question really is.
Do you ever take the snippets, and maybe some sort of take the snippets of the calls and include that in the email as part of like the benefit for the prospect?
1,000,000%. Yeah. Absolute best practice. Yeah, because again, it goes back to, why do you put something in air quotes? You put something, or not in air quotes, but you put some in actual quotes in the email, because you're just you're kind of, if you studied, if you've been trained in reflective listening, or if you're a fan of Chris Voss, and you know what the mirror is, where you repeat back to somebody, then you understand that the value of that is, we as human beings, we crave being heard and understood. Putting something in quotes is showing that I hear you, like I understand you, like that, right? And so it's like listening in writing, and video in the email is the same thing. Like I'm showing you said this thing, I'm hearing you, this was important, remember you said X. And then it's also an accountability thing. So later on down the road, when your deal is stalling, or it's losing momentum, or sort of budget becomes a thing, you can do what, if anybody out there is a fan of a Keenan, great book called Gap Selling, what Keenan talks about is like, you get down the road and say, wait a minute, I'm confused. Like we established that like X is a problem with Y impact, and like, And now you're going to go in this direction. You're not going to solve. I'm confused. I thought this is what we were talking about.
Yeah, I actually spoke to him last week, and he was telling me that. That was really, yeah, it's pretty funny.
So you're like throughout the process, by reflecting back to the customer and showing it, you're leaving yourself some breadcrumbs of accountability also.
Powerful. Yeah. I'm just doing a time check. We have about 7 more minutes on the actual episode. Yep. If it bleeds over a little bit, I'm totally fine with that if you are, but yeah.
I say let's stay on time. So I can say what else? So when you're doing the so far, what we've talked about is like tactics and techniques that are going to be super helpful for actually like deal execution. But let's pivot just a little bit to, sharpening your sword, like as a rep and getting better for the next one. This is going to sound, this is something that I think most AEs will struggle with. And it's go out of your way to give yourself kudos, to pat yourself on the back. Positive reinforcement is one of the most powerful forms of coaching in anything. I don't care if we're talking about like improving a jump shot. If you had a problem in your jump shot and a coach has been telling you to get your elbow in, when you get that elbow in, will you make the shot or not? Having that coach or your respect in your ear, like, yes, elbow is in. There's a lot of science in there in academia and how people learn that sort of validates that positive reinforcement. It really, really works for changing behavior. So there's a difference between getting out of a demo and just having an amazing feeling like, oh my God, I crushed that. Oh, well, why? Like, why did you actually crush that? What did you actually do in that meeting? That was great. Go and find the moment in the call. If you've got a conversation intelligence tool, right? Annotate it, like drop yourself a note, like, yes, like this is what I've been working toward. I'm proud of myself for challenging the customer in that moment, not letting them off the hook. Or, hey, this objection handling execution worked really, really well. And then share it with your manager, share it with a peer. So like, I was really stoked on how this worked. So also, by all means, find the moments where you either struggled and you don't know why. Ask your manager, ask a peer who you respect, like, hey, would you watch this 5 minutes and just tell me what you would have done here? I think that's what most people who invest in reviewing the game tape will do. And that's great.
Yeah.
But also find the moments that you're proud of and get really clear and specific on what exactly is it that you're proud of, because it will have a powerful effect of reinforcing that behavior in your next calls.
Yeah. I mean, that message alone is also, yes, for the AE, but so many managers, like I have access to like other Gong. I'm a collaborator in like Gong. I don't use Rep.io, whatever. I don't use Gong. Yeah. Other companies that I work with use Gong, and I'm going in and I'm looking at like their talk tracks of like the demo, and I'm looking at the annotations from leadership, and it's most of it is just negative feedback versus like, wow, great job asking the question this way. Next time, do like it's more negative and less constructive and optimistic and positive. Yeah.
I mean, there's a coaching workshop that I've helped to develop that our customer success managers and trainers do for revenue.io customers for the conversation intelligence stuff that we do. And that workshop is it's not really about like, hey, here are the features in the tool. I mean, they learn that. The workshop is more about we teach them 5 repeatable, easy like plays to run as a coach. And the first one, and what we tell because most of these sales managers and directors, really great, really smart, like natural born coaches, but like also, nobody goes to sales manager training or coaching school, right? That's why I thank God folks like you exist who can, like coach them. But we say, if you could do one thing, consistently, positive reinforcement. And so we sort of teach them, how do you use conversation intelligence tools to basically automatically kind of flag for you examples where somebody did something well, just so you can go into the call and be like, great job. And then curate those calls into a library. Somebody's onboarding and say, like, instead of don't do this, here's what good sounds like. Really powerful. Positive reinforcement is so important.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I have one more. If we have,
Yeah,
we have time.
we have time for one more. Yeah, we're good.
All right. This one is really important for reps. Pay attention to, I'm going to call it vibe. Pay attention to vibe. You know, how, like, what's your tone? Are you vibrating with passion? Attitude is contagious. If you are maybe early in your career, or maybe you're in a new job, like maybe you're not as confident as you would like to be. That's okay. That's natural. It's not okay to not be working on your confidence and your stage presence and basically how you show up. The impression you give another human being is really, really, really tied to your physiology, your tone, your excitement, your ability to sound like, hey, I believe in this thing that I'm selling, or I'm really curious, and that's why I'm asking you that question. You know, so it's different for everyone. Not everybody is passion doesn't come across in the same way, but you have to be aware of and sensitive to how do you want to show up, who makes you feel good when you are with them, you know, in a video meeting or in person, and am I showing up in the way that I want to from a vibe perspective.
Yeah, I talk about Josh Braun. If you follow him, he talks a lot about like how in sales you don't need to be like, don't confuse, or I think he says like something about like being overly enthusiastic and loud and whatever. My definition of enthusiasm and what you're saying is passion is not like this over the top energy. I would say it's more conviction. So you can be sort of like a low key, chilled vibe type of person, but you can tell the difference between someone that has a lot of conviction when they speak versus someone that's just like sort of passively speaking. And earlier on the call, when we started this, you had said, and I quote, and I don't know exactly what it was about, but you said an incredibly valuable resource. But you didn't say, oh, it was an incredibly valuable resource. You said it was an incredibly valuable, like you emphasize incredibly valuable, the words. And I actually wrote it down because I was like, that is a perfect example of what tonality should look like or should sound like.
And one just final coda to that, to your point around it doesn't sound the same for every person. I totally agree. So, and another value of game tape, and this is really, really for my managers and my coaches out there. If you've got someone and their sort of vibe is struggling and they're not compelling to be around, even if they're really smart, and maybe it's tied to confidence or sort of something like that. You got to find the person in your business who the way they radiate passion, enthusiasm, or sort of compelling, whatever that is sort of less obvious. Like maybe they're very neutral in their tone, but that credibility and enthusiasm comes across in a different way. So you can show the person who's maybe lacking in confidence what it's most likely going to look and sound like when they reach that confidence level. Because you don't want someone who's not overly enthusiastic to try to model somebody who is. That just
right.
Them, right? So let's find good examples and models of what good sounds like for the right person.
Nice, dude. This was awesome. Very much needed, this particular topic, because it's sort of like I made a post on LinkedIn the other day about how, or maybe I think it was today actually, that the tech stack it may make your life a little bit easier, but in order to actually get better, you actually need to put in the work. So this was really apropos to that. Where can people find you? This is your time to shine and sort of like hype yourself up.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, find me on LinkedIn. Again, Ryan Vaillancourt, VP of Sales at revenue.io. If you're among the audience out there thinking, what is this magical conversation intelligence sort of coaching stuff tools? I came to revenue.io because my passion is in coaching and doing exactly what it is that we're talking about. So we provide a platform and software that helps managers, but also reps do exactly what we're talking about. So, find me on LinkedIn. Maybe that can be helpful, but I do all kinds of, workshops like along the lines of what we're talking about for customers, SKOs, those kinds of things.
Yeah. I'm gonna put the link to your LinkedIn on the description of this episode also.
Oh, you know what I'll also do? I'll give you a link. We were talking in the beginning about really, really, really good recap. I've got an amazing free resource for people that is sort of a template on what really, really good recap looks like. If that's something that folks are interested in learning.
1000%. Yeah, this episode will be exclusively featured in my community before I actually launch it publicly on my podcast in a couple of months. Or I think it's in a month or two, but the actual resource was only going to be exclusive to my community. So yeah, that'd be really helpful.
Awesome.
I appreciate it. I'm going to stop the recording.